And I wanted to start tonight by just checking in and asking if you guys had any questions about the Unit 3 assignment. Since I didn't introduce it in person, it was the recorded video last week. Is there anything that you want me to elaborate on or go into more detail about, except for the visuals, because I'm going to explain a little bit more about that anyway.
No, not really. I don't believe so.
Okay.
For the proposal, are we actually like writing a paper for that, or are we just doing like a slideshow? Because I started like a paper, then like I wasn't sure like.
Yep, there are actually three components. So there's the written proposal, which is, yeah, I guess we could call it a paper. So you're writing out the proposal, and then there is the PowerPoint component. And then you're going to actually present that PowerPoint in a Zoom meeting with a small group of people from class next week.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else that I can answer for you guys?
How do we sign up for the Zoom meeting?
Let me show you real quickly. So pop over here. You know what? I don't want to go into the grade book, so we'll come here. So if you go on to the courses homepage in the Unit 3 module right here, if you just click on the sign up for Zoom presentation, date and time, that will take you to another place where you have to click, and then you'll just click the link here and you can sign up for any of these remaining times. So it looks like Wednesday the 10th is still completely open, and then there's a couple time slots left here on Monday and Tuesday as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions I can answer? Okay, then we'll talk really quickly here about the visuals for Unit 3. You'll see that in the course readings, there's a video, and that covers really how to create the visual itself in Microsoft Excel by inputting numerical data into the spreadsheet. And then really it's a simple process of using Excel's best features to kind of guide you through choosing the best visual, or whether you're going to use like a bar graph or a pie chart, kind of depends on the data that you're entering. So like I said, the video takes you through that. I want to explain how you're supposed to come up with numbers to make a visual. So for example, if my topic for the proposal, let's say my workplace, I've noticed that the employees are really unmotivated to get anything done because my workplace is not very good at recognizing employees or making my workplace a very positive place to be. So my proposal then is going to be to identify this problem of unmotivated employees. And maybe my solution to the problem is to implement some type of recognition system or incentives, just some way to make the employees feel like their hard work is getting noticed and other people can notice it too. So a way that I might incorporate numerical data and also meet the research component is finding a source like this. So I'll say employee satisfaction. Statistics. So if you throw in statistics into your search term there, that's usually going to give you numbers, and that's what you need in order to complete the visual is numbers. So here I've got 8 employee engagement statistics. And I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. Let's see what number looks good. Okay, so employee engagement reduces absenteeism. In fact, a Gallup study shows that highly engaged workplaces saw a 41% lower absenteeism and 21% more profitable. So my example is not working exactly the way I wanted it to. Really what we need is a graph that will work like this. Let's see. So you can even find an existing graph that has information related to what you're writing about. For instance, let's see. Okay, so job satisfaction, 45% of American workers were satisfied with their jobs in 2009, which is down from 61% in 1987. So let's say those numbers are a little more current because we'd want to use something slightly more current. So what I can do in order to make my original visual is take this information. We're finding 61.1, and then you can see this is a little bit lower. So we're going to take all the data and put that into Excel. And this is what the visual will show you how to do specifically. So you're basically going to take data that you find on an existing chart or in an article that you are using as one of your research sources, and you're going to input that data into Microsoft Excel following the instructions that are in the video. And you'll be able to very easily create some type of chart, whether it's a pie graph or a bar chart, whatever goes best with the data that you've gathered, you'll be able to create in Excel. I hope that makes sense. I thought my example would pan out a little more smoothly than it did, so I apologize for that. But do you guys have questions about how to find numerical data for your visual?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I was a little, the one question I did have though regarding the visual is, are we putting that into the paper just like in the middle of the page type thing?
Yes, so and the video actually goes through that pretty extensively too, like how to take the finished visual from Microsoft Excel and put it into Microsoft Word. And it also talks about where to put it. And in a nutshell, there should be some paragraph in your paper that is discussing that numerical data. So something along the lines of, you know, employee engagement is really important as seen in the visual to the right. So you'll place the visual then near the words that actually reference it in your text.
Okay. I guess that was just, I just wasn't sure how, I guess you could say like big to put the visual, because I know you want to, the paper's a little bit longer, and not that I was concerned about like having enough to, I guess, write about, but like at a certain point, these visuals do kind of have to carry the paper if it's going to be 4 pages.
So
Not carry it, but you know what I mean? Like you have to have data, you know, regarding the point that you're bringing up or the problem.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and when you do get into a little bit lengthier of a paper like this, it's fine. Actually, like if you wanted to include 2 visuals, like if you have a topic that lends itself really well to numerical data and statistics and you want to build in more than 1 visual, you certainly can. All right, so I'm gonna jump in. I'm sorry for the Fortnite alerts popping up. I am somehow connected to my child's Xbox and I don't know how to turn it off. So for this meeting, we'll just have to bear with me on that. So we'll go ahead and get started and talk about how to create a good PowerPoint presentation. It is more than just bullet points. I feel that the idea of bullet points being put on a PowerPoint slide has been kind of just pushed into everyone's head, like use bullet points, and that's true. We are going to use bullet points on our PowerPoint slides, but it's a lot more than that if you want your presentation to actually be engaging and interesting. So getting started, will you guys share with me what you already know about the do's and the don'ts for creating a PowerPoint slide?
Don't
Well, I
use
know you're not
paragraph.
supposed to have, sorry.
That's okay. I heard no paragraphs.
You're not supposed to have like a lot of information so that you're like staring at the PowerPoint, but like we're over Zoom, so you don't
Yeah.
want to sound like you're reading it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I'm just going to kind of add these to the list here. So no paragraphs, not too much info. Don't read the slide. These are all really good. summarize. Don't use a lot of capitalized fonts I'm seeing in the chat. Those are good too. I don't use all caps as I type in all caps. It's just the default for this particular slide design, however. So good. So we have a lot of don'ts. No paragraphs. Don't put too much info on a slide. Don't read the slide. Don't use all caps. And we have one do, which is summarize your ideas. Anything else that we can add? Okay, I'm satisfied with this list as being pretty good. A couple of more things we're going to add as we go along in the PowerPoint slides that are about PowerPoint slides. So what does a well-designed PowerPoint slide look like? First of all, it's visually interesting, which is the opposite of boring. I tend to see a lot of student presentations that are just nothing more than a solid color background and then text on the slide. And that is not engaging. It's not visually interesting. So you want to have color, you want to have shapes, you want to have movement. As I said right here, it has movement. We don't want too much movement. You want to have movement that is enough to capture your audience's interest, but not so much that it's distracting from the point that you're making. And an effective or well-designed PowerPoint slide is not crammed with text or bullet points. Like we said in that previous slide, we don't want too much information to be placed onto the PowerPoint slide. And sorry, I was checking the chat there. So over here, you know, I've copied this kind of list. This is a list of bullet points. It's the latest in the cutting edge presentation style. I say so, it must be true. And I know about repetition, so I'll say it again. Any questions? So we don't want to have just a long list of bullet points on a slide. So this over here on the left, this should have like the big red X. This is what not to do. Over here on the right, this is what you can do. So it's bullet points, it's not paragraphs, it's not super crammed up, and it moved. So we want to kind of model after the right and not the left. And I'm going to show you some tricks to get you there. And the last bullet point, it supports and does not replace your verbal presentation. That someone else mentioned that on the last slide, that you're not going to read off of the slide. That's another really, really common mistake that I see. People rely on full sentences, and that's why I think we get paragraphs on slides sometimes, because you're maybe not prepared to deliver your presentation and talk about your content. So you put everything you can on the slide and then you just read it. But that's not at all the purpose of the PowerPoint. It's just there as kind of a like a supporting actor role. It's not supposed to be the main event. So this is horrible, right? This is kind of, I jumped into this next slide and I've got 5 bullet points. They're all kind of long. And when it comes up on the screen, you don't know what to do. Are you listening to me? Are you starting to read the bullet points? Are you looking at the picture over there? It kind of puts your brain into this very confused state as the viewer. So you don't ever want to pull up a PowerPoint slide like this where all of the bullet points are just slapped onto the screen. You've got to use the animation to pull them up one at a time. So I'm going to kind of come through these and just read why they're bad. So we've got detailed bullet point that is a full sentence and it's hard for people to read. We have another bullet point that is equally long and dense. And once again, it's just begging for people's attention. So when we have multiple long bullet points all hit the screen at once, the viewers have to choose between what you're saying as the presenter and the slide. And that's why it's best to not use the long bullet points, use animation to drop them in as you're ready to discuss them. And this applies to anything that goes on your screen. So you want to really think about what you have to have on the screen to support what you're saying at what time, so that you can organize the information and then have it animated to support what you're saying. So a much more improved version, the slide comes up and we've just got the visual here, and I can talk for a minute with just the visual there. Lets people kind of get used to the visual. They look at it, they see that they don't have to do much with it, and they can come back to paying attention to me. Then I can pop in my first bullet point. This is a much better slide. This is a concise, nice little sentence, and you're able to take it in while still listening to the presenter. Now we have another bullet point. These bullet points are shorter. So again, you can listen while taking in the information. And since the bullets are appearing as I'm ready to discuss them, you're able to let bullet 1 and bullet 2 kind of go because I'm moving on from them. You as the viewer then are less overwhelmed as the slide goes on. The visual though could still be a problem. Why do we think it could be a problem? Because it's not relevant to the content and because it's not dressed up. So when you include visuals on your slides, and you should, without a doubt, you should include visuals on almost every slide, it has to somehow be relevant to the content. So you can't just throw flowers on because your teacher said, yeah, you need visuals. Think of a relevant visual for your slide. In this case, I might use, I could use another list of bullet points like over here, like I did, let me come back here, like I did here on this slide. My visual is this over here on the left. So since I was talking about not overwhelming a slide with bullet points, I used a visual that represented what I was saying not to do. What I mean by it not being dressed up, I'm going to show you on the next slide. So this is how you can improve upon the visual. You insert your visual, and I'm going to go through and show you how to do it. So you'll insert your visual and you'll polish it using the picture format tool, and then you can use the design tool to improve the whole slide. So to insert a picture, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. You can do it the long way, which is go to insert, picture from this device, and then you can pick a picture, or you can kind of take like if this is my picture, you can just right click on any Google image, do copy image, and then you could just paste it right onto the slide. So that's kind of the faster way to do it, but we'll get rid of that one for now. So once you've got your picture placed onto the slide, there's the coolest feature, if you have the most recent version of PowerPoint, is to use this design tool. So you go up to design on the top menu and click design ideas right here. And PowerPoint creates all of these different versions of the slide for you, where they're placing the visual, they're blowing it up, placing it in different places. So it's really kind of a nice tool that you can pick from. If you don't have the most recent version of PowerPoint, then, or you're using Google Slides or something, you don't have this tool available. But it is really helpful. So if you have access to it, I suggest using it. Otherwise, you can use the picture format tool. So when you click on the image itself, a little extra menu option will appear up at the top, and that's picture format. And then you can really simply just look at the different picture styles. And like, I tend to like this one. It curves the edges and it makes a little reflection happen off the bottom of the picture. You can also put something in a frame, like a white frame would look nicer here. And there's a lot of different options. We can kind of change the shape and add the white frame. That doesn't look great on this background. But there's quite a few different options. As you can see, I'm changing up here in the middle of the menu. And then you can do little things too, like changing the, like if you do pick a frame, you can change the color of the frame. I could change it to blue, and you could change it to make it heavier, a thicker border. So there's lots of different options. Once you click off of the picture, that menu goes away. So again, you just have to click the picture, and then picture format comes back up, and it allows you to play with the picture. I also want to show you guys how to do the animation of an actual slide. So that is right here. So adding the animation is easy, and the instructions are right here. I'm just going to read through them, and then I will actually animate the slide for you. So you'll go to the animation menu option and select the first line of text that you want to appear. So you're going to go through and add any bullet points that you want on the slide first, so that you can then order them after you've entered them. Then you'll choose the style of animation that you want and repeat. It's really simple. And you can also remove text from the screen when you're done with it. So I'll show you that, and you can add transitions in between slides. So here's how we add. So this is my first bullet point. I'm just going to highlight it, and then I'm going to go to animations up here in the top menu. And these are the different choices I have to animate with. And there's a lot, again. I tend to stick with floating in, flying in, and splitting because they're simple and they're fast and they're not overly distracting. Doesn't mean that you can't ever use, something like the zoom or the grow and turn. You just want it to be used with intention because it makes sense to use it. So I'll just stick with the split for this one. And that's going to split. So then the little number 1 appears, letting me know that this is the first thing that's going to appear on when I click enter. And then you can just go through and apply the animation to each of your bullets. If you want to have 2 of them happen at once, that's no problem. Just highlight 2. You can see these are both now labeled number 3. And we'll label these number 5. So if you want to remove something from the screen, you can do that. And I'll show you how. So let's say I wanted to remove this last bullet point. You'll highlight what you want to remove from the screen, and you will then go up to the top and you'll go to animation pane. Nope, I lied. You'll go to add animation. My bad. So you highlight what you want, you go to add animation, and then you can go to more exit effects. And you can use any one of these. Again, I like to stick with fly out and dissolve out and split out again, because I think those are just the most simple and least distracting ones, but we'll go ahead and choose split. And we have okay. So now if we take a look at how the slide appears, we've got our bullet points coming up as I'm hitting enter on my keyboard. And then this very last one will take the last bullet point away. So if you want to get really fancy, you can always you can add 2 bullet points and talk about those bullet points, and then you can have them disappear when you move on to the next bullet points. So if you don't want to have, say, all the bullet points remaining on the screen the whole time, then just disappear the initial bullet points as you move on to different bullet points. Adding slide transitions, what that means is that there's an effect that happens when I move from slide 8 to slide 9. And that's just up here in the top menu in the transitions. And you can choose from any number of these. I like flip. So that means when we move from, actually it should be from slide 8 to slide 9, but we'll just, okay, so it did it from 7 to 8. And I had already had the slide there. Okay, so I know that that was kind of a lot. Any questions, or does anyone want me to go over the animations, transitions, exit effects, the design tool over here? Any questions about any of that stuff?
No.
No.
Okay, so make sure as you're working on your PowerPoint presentation that goes along with your written proposal that you are using animation, that you are including visuals on your slides, that you're not cramming slides filled with, overwhelming amounts of information. It's better to have more slides with less information per slide than it is to have, just 4 or 5 slides that are jam-packed. Those are grading points when you present your presentation in the Zoom meeting. If you have not used animation, so you're just dropping slides filled with bullet points, that's going to impact your grade in a negative way. So these ideas about using animations and keeping your slides concise are not suggestions, they're grading points. So keep that in mind as you create your presentation. And I wanted to end up by leaving you guys with a couple of tips for delivering an online presentation. I'm going to guess that, well, actually, I'm kind of curious. Have any of you guys been asked to do a Zoom presentation or an online presentation since all this COVID mess started?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, I have. quite often actually, for a lot of my like design type classes.
Okay. Okay, so some no's and some yeses, and I'm seeing in the chat too, we have a mix of no and yes. Okay, so, and I really was curious about that because I realize it's been a year now that we've been in COVID mode and a lot of things have come online. So as a teacher, I wondered how many other teachers were asking students to do this. If you've never done it before, I don't think that it's particularly intimidating, at least for our class, because I don't require that you have your video camera on. I think that's when it becomes a little bit more awkward, is when you're trying to present something, but you've also got that little window of your own face up in the corner. It's hard to not be paying attention to the camera and the slides themselves. So for our purposes, you can present the same way that I do, where you will just share your screen and have your PowerPoint presentation fill up the entire screen. Some of the tips that I have for you guys are to be really prepared first and foremost. The more prepared you are, the smoother it's going to be, the more confident you're going to sound. And, you know, there's a good example of that at the beginning of this presentation. I was not as prepared as I should have been to do that visual discussion with you guys when I was trying to find the numerical data. Had I been better prepared, then I wouldn't have fumbled through it and I wouldn't have taken up an extra couple of minutes of your guys' time. So and I'm going to guess that it was painfully obvious to you guys that I was not as prepared for that moment of the presentation as I should have been. And it always is. It's always obvious to the viewers when someone has not taken the time to prepare or think about what they're about to say or present. So for you guys, and for me too, going forward, winging it is never a good idea. Even when you are sure that you'll be able to nail what you want to say, be prepared. Writing out your content can really, really help if you're a nervous presenter. I find that, like, when I first started teaching in the classroom, this sounds silly, but I literally had to write out everything that I was going to say for the entire class. And then I would literally memorize it. I didn't do that for like the full first semester or anything, but the first like several classes, I had to do that because I was just so nervous about everything. So if you are a nervous presenter, write it out, write out what you're going to say, read it over, fine tune it. And the more that you work with what you've written, the more familiar it becomes and the easier it becomes to present it. So that's in the week before the presentation. So now-ish. In the hour before the presentation, make sure that you have everything prepared and ready to access. So pull up your PowerPoint, open it, make sure there's not a problem with the file, make sure that the file is where you think it is, and just run through all of your slides. Just always give them a quick glance over just to make sure that there's no surprises in there and you're familiar with the organization and the order of what's going to come next. And then just do what you can to minimize interruptions. You know, turn the ringer on your phone off, make sure that the house is as quiet as you can get it. Of course, you know, we've all got dogs and some of us kids and things that are a little bit out of our control. So I think I'm definitely understanding when it comes to that, but you want to do your best to try to minimize prior to your presentation. And then when it's go time, try to relax, try to take a deep breath. Remember to introduce yourself at the beginning of the presentation. And that's just more of a formality that you would do. You know, for our class, is it really necessary? No. Like, I know who you are when you start presenting, because I'll say, Ashley, go ahead and why don't you begin your presentation? But it's a good habit to be in, that when you first start to speak, especially in an online setting where people cannot see your face, that you take a minute and just say, hi, I'm Tiffany McPherson. Tonight, I'm here to talk to you about my proposal for improving employee motivation here at Red Lobster. So give your name, tell the people what you're going to talk to them about, and then you can jump in to your presentation. That's just good form, best practice. Don't sweat small mistakes. So if you flub up your words, or you feel like there's an entire slide missing that you can't figure out where it went, or you say something incorrect, don't get too caught up in it. You can apologize. If it's a glaring error, then you probably need to acknowledge it and let your reader know, or let your listener know that you made a mistake, and then move forward. But don't let it interrupt your flow of things. Just take a breath and move on to the next item that you're going to talk about. Couple of additional tips, start really strong, and it really helps to have that introduction practice where you say what your name is and what you're going to be talking about. Say that 10 times before you begin your presentation, because when you start strong, people will kind of immediately buy in to what it is that you're saying. If you start out really insecure, kind of sounding not very confident, or you stumble over your words, we talked about that in the beginning of the semester, people, they make that first impression, that first judgment, and they will not take your presentation as seriously as they would have if you had started out really strongly. You should usually end with a thank you. So thank you for taking the time to be here tonight, or thank you for taking the time to listen to my ideas, anything along those lines, but you do want to thank your listeners for listening. And my final tip, do not end with a reference slide. So even when you're required to include references for a PowerPoint presentation, you do not want to leave your viewers with the last impression is like some APA formatted references. That's just never going to make them remember you in a really memorable, important way. So instead, what you should do is take that reference slide and place it at the very, very beginning. So I don't have a reference slide here, but let's just say I did. I would place the reference slide here, right? So this is my references. And we have all of our references on the slide. Most of the time we see these here. So now as I'm wrapping up my presentation, I'm like, and thank you for being here and listening to me tonight. I hope that you learned a lot. And these are my references. And it's like, okay, why does your viewer want to see a list of references? And it just kind of ruins your thank you, and it does not allow you to be polished. So my suggestion is, after you make that reference slide, bump it all the way up to the first slide. And when you are the presenter, before you share your screen, you don't start with your reference slide. Start with the first slide that you mean to present. And you don't need to show anybody this reference slide except for your teacher, or if someone approaches you after a presentation and says, hey, that was a really interesting statistic, can I have the reference for that? You say, yeah, sure, hold on, let me pull that slide right up for you. It doesn't need to be part of the presentation. It's there, it has to exist, but it does not need to actually come across your screen unless someone specifically asks for it. And that is all, you guys. Any questions for me about presenting or PowerPoints or the visuals or anything else that we talked about or that we didn't talk about?
Did you say like how many slides we need to have?
No, I didn't. And that's because you can have as many as you need to have. So I guess if I was going to give a suggested length, I would say somewhere between 10 and 15 is probably about right. But it could be as few as 8 or as many as 30, just depending on your style and how many bullet points you put on a slide and visuals and things like that. Tori asked, should we include a title slide? So yeah, you definitely can. Let me see, yeah, I think I usually do. Your title slide though, it should not be classroom oriented. And what I mean by that is that it shouldn't say like English, W231 and then your name and then my name and the date. If you're going to include a title slide, it should go right along with the proposal. So it should fit what you're actually doing in a real world context. So yes, for a title slide, if it's professional, no for a title slide, if it's academic or school related. And Annalisa, I was just using PowerPoint, just basic Microsoft PowerPoint. And you can get that by going to Office 365. Type that into the chat. It's like $8 a month, you guys, to get Office 365. And then you have Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, a couple other things. And it's probably the best $8 I spend every month. I guess that's kind of lame, but then you have the most recent version of everything.
Pretty sure the school pays for it.
Do they really?
If you look it up on one.iu, like look up like PowerPoint or like Word, it'll give you a free version of it to use.
Nice. So if we go to here, So one.iu.edu, and we can just like look up PowerPoint or Office 365. Okay. Okay, so it's gonna make me, oh yeah, so then I could just sign in through my IU edu. All right, guys, so everybody should have access then to use PowerPoint for the assignment. And I definitely think PowerPoint is way better than Google Slides. There's more functionality in PowerPoint. That doesn't mean you can't use Google Slides if you want to. I definitely don't want to limit you if that's your preference. And I guess I should say too, if you're a big fan of Prezi, then you can also use Prezi for this assignment. I wonder if Office 365 is free for me. I will have to look into that. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. Any other questions, you guys?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
All right, give me just a minute here. I've had trouble with Zoom capturing your guys's attendance. It's supposed to, but I'm not always getting that. So let me just make sure that I have got everybody before you sign off. Just a minute, just counting to make sure. Okay. All right, so I have got everybody down, and that wraps up our meeting for the night. Adriana asked, yes, I will post the Zoom recording. It usually takes about an hour for it to render, so I will either do it tonight or first thing tomorrow. Definitely before, I'll say definitely before 10 a.m. tomorrow. I will have it posted on the YouTube account. And that's it. So if you don't have any questions, you can go ahead and sign off, and make sure you sign up for the Zoom presentation for next week. I do that sooner rather than later, and have a great night.
You too. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask how the baby is?
She's good. She's so good. She's here, I'll show you. I took a really cute picture. I'm, you know, I guess like any mom, I'm always really happy to show pictures. Let me see. This is my latest favorite one.
She's so cute.
Thank
I
you.
love her so.
She's really pretty, and I love how you always have her dressed up. So cute.
You know what? Like, truth be told, I don't always have her dressed up, but it's so easy to just throw a little bow on her head, and she looks dressed up as soon as I throw a bow on.
She does. It's so
It's my
cute.
favorite thing to do with baby girls is to just plop a bow on, and it makes everything look so much nicer.
It does. I'm just like, yeah, I'm just over the moon. I mean, I have boys, so this is like
Aw,
it's like having a baby doll to dress up all the time.
yes.
Yeah, so she's good. She's a good baby. One of these meetings I'll bring her on camera when I look a little bit less momish. New
She's
momish.
very quiet during the meeting. That's good.
Yeah, I'm impressed. My husband has kept her completely quiet. So either she's sleeping, or that she's got to be sleeping, or maybe he's just entertaining her. I don't know.
All right, have a good night.
Thanks, you guys too. Thanks for
Thank
asking.
you.